if my questions are repetitive, you'll have to forgive me. We've been bouncing back and forth from votes and other committees. So my first question for Mr. Brault, if you will. Look, I think all scams are bad, and consumers being taken advantage of is, of course, horrible as well. But sadly, it happens far too often in all different forms. We see it with crypto scams, Western Union scams, gift card scams, just to name a few. Shouldn't we be focusing our attention on the actual scammers and not the specific medium that they're using?
Senator, thank you for the question. I don't believe it's an either-or proposition. I believe that we can redouble our efforts to go after scammers and try and put them behind bars. And one of the best ways to do that is to give the entities that are in their best position to help that happen the incentives they need to do so. And I believe that the entities that are best positioned to provide the kind of data to law enforcement they need are the banks. Currently, because the costs of the fraud that are occurring are not borne by the banks, they lack that incentive. And I think that that is where Congress can step in. Just as Congress stepped in and made sure that the Electronic Funds Transfer Act had limited liability for credit and debit card customers. And now if you're anything like me, the last time you found out that a scammer got a hold of your credit card, it wasn't because you noticed a suspicious charge on your bank statement. It's because your bank called you and said, Senator, did you just spend $500 on a big screen TV in Los Angeles when you were just in Kansas the other day? You said no. You reimbursed the losses, and then you provided a new card. We think that system works very well and has given consumers a lot of faith in credit and debit cards. And we think that same system could apply in peer-to-peer payments. But it doesn't.
And we should just let the scammers go on.
No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that the best way to create systems and incentives for the banks who are in the best position to go after these scammers with the help of law enforcement is to give them the incentive, a financial incentive, to put skin in the game when it comes to going after these scammers. And that incentive structure has worked great in credit and debit, and I think it worked great in P2P.
Don't you think we could do more by going after the scammers, whether they're successful or not successful? It's like we let them try to rob the bank. If we don't catch them, if they don't rob the bank, we don't prosecute them. Don't you think there's more we can do to go after the scammers themselves?
Absolutely. There's always more we can do. We could fully fund the enforcement agencies that are responsible for going after those scammers, like the CFPB and the FTC. But it's not a zero-sum game.
But you would agree with me, even if we could shut down Zelle, or if we could make them scam-proof, these bad actors would just find another mechanism to do what they're doing. It's like a balloon. You push it in one place and the air comes out some other part of it.
Sure. They will undoubtedly look to other methods to get payment. We know that cryptocurrency, for example, is becoming a far bigger mechanism and venue for fraud. Gift cards are another way that scammers seek to get paid. But just because squeezing the balloon, as you put it, in one place and moving it to another doesn't mean we shouldn't squeeze the balloon in the first place.
You know, rather than attacking financial infrastructure that's used by thousands of banks and over 100 million consumers, shouldn't our focus be on consumer education to prevent people falling victim to scams?
So I do believe that consumer education has a role to play, but I think that far too often consumer education has been used as an excuse for the banks not to do more. In the complaints that we hear from consumers all the time, and as we heard from Ms. Humphreys just a few minutes ago, scammers are very, very adept at coaching people around any kind of consumer education warnings that they may get from the banks. They are professional, sophisticated criminals. This is what they do all day, every day, and they have an answer to every question and every warning message that you may see in a process. That's why they're professionals. And so while consumer education—
But the FBI is professionals too. Why can't law enforcement crack down on these people more? What's keeping us from getting more of these scammers?
Well, as I said, I don't think that the banks have the incentives they need to invest as much as they should. One of the reasons that we can go after bank robbers is because banks provide the information, closed-circuit video and everything to law enforcement to help them go after that. The banks have skin in the game when there's a bank robbery. We think that banks should have more skin in the game when it comes to bank robbery that just happens to happen on Zelle.
I've been told that 99.9% of transactions processed on Zelle have no reports of fraud or scams. Is that like a reasonable number?
Senator, I have no reason to doubt that number, but in fact, I think that only underscores what we think should happen, that if you create the kind of incentives that would require them to make consumers like Ms. Duvall and Ms. Humphreys whole when this fraud happens, that they should be able to absorb those losses. Either it's a very small problem, or it's a very big problem. If it's a very small problem like they claim, then they shouldn't have any trouble in reimbursing the victims.
Okay, thank you so much. I yield back.